All right, we are going to get started here. Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Marty, and I am the Adult Programming Coordinator for the library. And I just have to thank one group here tonight, which is the Friends of Peter White Public Library. If you are watching online right now on YouTube, you have the Friends to thank for that, because they pay for all of our live streaming equipment, among a lot of other things. So we're so grateful for the Friends. I'm just going to focus on a couple of things that are upcoming this month and next month. So on Tuesday the 30th, we do have our monthly Blues Day Tuesday concert, and that's going to be the real-time folk band, which features Bill Hart. And if you ever seen Bill Hart do a concert, you know that half of it is talking and half of it is playing music, and it's wonderful. So please come for that. And then next month, I'll just highlight a couple things that are upcoming. At the beginning of the month, we have a wonderful writer coming, Tom Lynch. He is going to be here on Tuesday, October 7th, reading from his debut novel. He's published poetry, obviously. He's published nonfiction, but his new novel, his debut novel, No Prisoners, is coming out, and he's going to be here on October 7th, 6:30, right here in the community room. So, and we're going to have John Smolens here, who's going to be doing a conversation about what it is like to be a novelist. So we're excited about that. Yes. Let's see here. Also, coming up, it's usually traditionally called Banned Books Week, which is the first week of October. We are rechristening it Free to Read Week, focusing on intellectual freedom and the ability to read whatever you want to read. So we have a bunch of, yes, absolutely. We have a bunch of events happening that month, that week. But on October 6th, which is the Monday night of that week, we are going to be having a book discussion of Percival Everett's Erasure, as well as a screening of his film American Fiction that was based on Erasure. And if you've never seen that movie, do yourself a favor and come that night. You can bring you can bring your dinner. We'll have tables set up. We can talk. We can eat, and then we can talk about a great book and watch a great movie. And then coming up, I'll just focus on films. How's that? For our docu-cinema, which is on October 10th, we're doing a documentary called Birth of the Living Dead, The Making of Night of the Living Dead. A really wonderful documentary about George Romero's groundbreaking zombie film. And if you don't like George Romero and zombie films, shame on you. You should come and see this. Anyway, and then at the end of the month, we are doing another dinner and a movie, and it is going to be Ryan Coogler's film Sinners. And if you have not seen that film, I really encourage you to come for that. I think that is, for me, right now, the best movie that I've seen this year. It's so good. All right, so lots of great stuff coming up. And then last thing I'm going to focus on is we are doing a fundraiser event on Tuesday, October 14th. Beth, we have an event here on our anniversary. Okay, good. My wife is back there. I haven't broken that news to her, but I promise to take you out for drinks afterward. Anyway, we have Wow. We have Dan Reedholm, who's a local historian and also cinephile, and he's going to be doing a 2-hour presentation called Preminger Directs Marquette. It is Otto Preminger's 120th birthday this year, and so he's going to be talking about Otto Preminger coming to Marquette, his career, but also his making of Anatomy of a Murder, and also the other times that he actually came back to Marquette and filmed other things here as well. So that is a fundraiser on October 14th. That is a ticketed event. There are 75 tickets available. They are $5 a piece, and all of that money goes right back into programming here at the library. So I really encourage you to come and see that fundraiser. It's going to be fantastic. All right, so let me do a little introduction for Matt here, and then I'm going to turn things over to the man of the hour. So I actually wrote this up. I generally don't write up my introductions, but I wrote something for Matt. So here we go. I'm obsessed with Matthew Gavin Frank. Perhaps the way that Nabokov was obsessed with butterflies, or Maggie Nelson with the color blue. My obsession started over 15 years ago. I first met Matt at Carnegie Public Library in Ishpeming. He'd just come to town with his wife, Louisa, who's another person I'm very obsessed with. She knows that. And he had just accepted a position in the creative writing program here at NMU. When I was introduced to him, Matt gave me this quizzical Matt look. I'm sure if you know him, you know the look. And the one where it looks like he's trying to either defuse a plutonium-grade missile or, solve the riddle of the Sphinx, one or the other. And he asked me this question: are you related to the chef Grant Achatz? And this is a question I frequently get, especially from foodies and people who know the restaurant industry. And I gave him my standard answer, which was no, but Grant is related to me. He laughed, and we were fast friends from then on. A little bit later in the summer, over Szechuan pizza at the Portside, we were talking about this just a little bit ago, I asked Matt what he was working on, and he said, and he shook his head. And he was licking his fingers with the Szechuan sauce, and he said, I'm writing a short little essay about the giant squid. And he brushed the air as if he was trying to shoo away, his obsessive dreams and thoughts about the giant squid, But about 3 years after that little pizza dinner, Matt published his short little essay, which was not that short, but it was the book-length lyric meditation on the giant squid called Preparing the Ghost, still one of my favorite books of his, which became a New York Times book review editor's choice selection. And over the years that I've known him, Matt has been obsessed with working on a pot farm, mapping the signature food of all 50 states in the U.S., exploring the diamond industry and the mythology of pigeons in South Africa, and now DIY submersible subs in his newest book, Submersed. When I was a kid, I obsessively used a magnifying glass to look at the world, discover, how an ant's body moved, and why this mushroom was growing on this dead stump. I've come to think of Matt's work as a magnifying glass in a way, taking the minutia of the universe and mining it for meaning and wonder and surprise. Matt grew up in Illinois, graduated with an MFA from Arizona State University, and is currently a professor at NMU's English department. He is a writer, he is a wizard, he is an obsessive, and most of all, I am really, really lucky enough to be able to say that he is my dear, dear friend. Please give a big Peter White Public Library welcome to Matt Gavin Frank.
I'm glad you said I was like the magnifying glass. I was afraid you were going to say I was more like the dead stump. Thanks for coming, you all. I feel like we need some joy. So I have this joke. It's a very short one, so I'm going to tell it. You know what the drummer named his twin daughters? And a 1 and a 2. Yeah. On my own opening act. That's it. I'm going to get right into this because I'm going to read a new section out of the book that I have never read aloud before, in part because Marty mentioned this section to me earlier today. And it'll probably take about 25 minutes, I'm guessing, and that's long enough. So I'm going to get right into it. But Submersed, it's this foray into the wonder and madness that oceans have inspired in us across history, and it's a real burrowing into the DIY submersible building community. They're out there. And these are oftentimes folks who, with little to no formal engineering training whatsoever, are so obsessed with sinking into the deep sea that in their backyards and garages, they fashion these dream machines to pilot them to the deep. And should they submerse, they sometimes do so to their own detriment, or to the detriment of others. Sometimes they succeed, and they say really, really beautiful things. There's also a true crime like murder thread in the book, but I'm not going to read about that today. I want to read about beautiful, wondrous things. And so I'm going to get right into it, I guess. I will preface it this way. So I can't swim. I am afraid of the ocean. I am a claustrophobe. And I have had recurring drowning nightmares since I was 4 years old. All that's true. And then for the book, I ended up traveling to Roatan, Honduras, to go down to 2,000 feet in a home-built amateur submersible made by this guy, Carl Stanley, who was originally from New Jersey. He built his DIY submersible in a defunct airport hangar in rural Oklahoma and had it towed out to Roatan, Honduras, which is one of the spots on Earth that has incredibly deep water so close to shore. I think that's all you need to know. Idabel, I'm going to start mid-chapter. So Idabel is the name of his little submarine, and his name is Carl Stanley. Idabel is suspended over a rectangular hole cut into Stanley's wooden dock by a polyethylene rope and grappling hook beneath a corrugated awning onto which Stanley has written, "Go deeper," in bright red paint. The sub is roughly the shape of a tiny helicopter with a bulb on top, 13 feet long, 8 feet tall, 6 feet wide. From the side, it resembles some robot snowman wearing a hoop skirt. Stanley mixed 2 different paints together to get Idabel's yellow the shade he wanted. Canary meets hot dog mustard. Some industry people say things about being asinine, Stanley says, for anybody to be operating a manned sub without communications. Everybody knows they're referring to me. There's nobody else doing that. But it's calculated. I don't expect anybody around here to be able to rescue me. So what's the point of communicating? It's adding another layer of complication. I don't want to use it. He relays a story about Idabel getting caught on a nylon line when trying to salvage a shipwreck. The sub hiccuped in the middle of the ocean, and the line fluttered, some umbilical tether, all the way to the sunken ship. Stanley took shallow breaths. There was enough air inside the sub for him to survive for 3 days. Barracuda peered in through the porthole. As the hours passed, the sea grew dark, then darker. Though he was finally able to liberate Idabel 8 hours later, he admits, the sub could have hung there for months, if not years, until some leak finally managed to flood it and sank it to the bottom, all the while having me inside, heavy into the process of decomposing. To get into the sub, I must drop into it, bracing my arms on either side of the hatch. The opening is just wide enough for me to fit, tight as those culverts my mother warned me about playing in as a kid on the outskirts of Chicago, perpetuating the suburban legend about some curious boy who crept inside, got tangled in trash, and died in the darkness, the rats rendering him to his skeleton, which washed out a year later. My mother would not approve of this. Wriggling through the entry chute, I lower myself through Stanley's captain's chamber, which is lit up red like old New Orleans, a series of dials and levers and cables stuck to the hole's interior. some welded, some seemingly attached with Velcro and super glue. His captain's chair is a tattered bicycle seat. A ring of portholes halos Stanley, and he looks like a cartoon that's been thumped on the head, encircled by daffy birds. I emerge into the bottommost sphere and sit on a small bench. A plastic fan whirs over my left shoulder, and I have to hunch to keep from knocking it off the hull. In front of me is a pristine plexiglass viewport, 4 inches thick and 19 inches in diameter. And there's another porthole at my socked feet, which rest on a burlap bag filled with lead shot, a weight that I will later pass up to Stanley in order to balance Idabel in the deep. The space is hardly larger than a laundry dryer, and I press my nose to the viewport and breathe and wait and hold my breath. It feels airless and humid, but I've brought my long-sleeved shirt in a plastic grocery bag. As Stanley says, at depth, the hull can become ice cold and wet with condensation. He pulls the heavy hatch door closed and seals it. My heart races, and I sweat and bite my lip, and I have to say something to him. It's like we're in a vacuum, I try. My hands shake. If the sub fails, we could suffocate. If we attempt escape, we can die from pulmonary hemorrhages. We could be knocked unconscious by the pressure, or succumb to arterial gas embolisms, or fall to immersion-induced pulmonary edema. We could certainly drown. Through the porthole between my feet, the seagrass waves, and skinny electric blue fish emerge, then disappear into the blades. Stanley is too busy potchkeying with the dials to answer me. We descend from the crane. The ocean laps up over the viewport, and soon we're taxiing toward the subsea canyon where we will drop. Over the motors drone, Stanley speaks of the deep as a stable zone, oddly suspended in time, as if a burial ground and a museum, interring vessels, the skeletons of long-extinct creatures we still don't know ever existed, the remains of fish and cephalopods, invertebrates and people. This is him, tour guiding. Attached to the steel encasing us is no phone, no radio, nothing to cry Mayday into. Any distress we experience at depth will be known to us alone. Here we go, Stanley says. He throws a lever upward, and the air rushes from the ballast tanks. We go under, the depth measuring dial to my left, jumping to life. At 400 feet, the water is still clear. The surface light pinkens the reef, some dim, wound-like throb hovering over the shadows of flying rays, schools of fish winking in and out as if stars, the languishing, condom-like pyrosomes, bobbing at the whimsy of the water until stirred by a predator into swimming. When inspired to bioluminesce, the pyrosome's openings dance as if a chorus of Munchian mouths, silently screaming beneath some disco ball. The bioluminescent crumbs, comprised of all sorts of creatures, crustaceans, and dinoflagellates, once they appear, they never disappear. They are there, like the cosmos, whirling through the viewport. Some flap their tiny wings. Orange, semi-transparent squid push their way through the crumbs, jetting their plumes of purple ink into which blue thread-leg jellies take refuge. Idabel is dropping into the sea, and I am sinking with it. From his captain's chair, over the rumble of the sub's motors, Carl Stanley tells me he's known divers who become so bewitched at depth, partially because of the euphoria of nitrogen narcosis, that they unstrap themselves from their gear and dedicate their bodies to the sea. It can't get any better than this, they think. After feeling this, life on the surface could no longer be bearable, rife with the curdling wails of the sirens. Their remains are all over the place down here. The starfish overtake them. Within the confines of the sub, at depth, Stanley's voice sounds hollow, flat. His words seem to stop short, unable to linger or echo. He gushes about the rarely seen blunt-nosed six-gill sharks we're hoping to spot, the ones he pre-dropped fermented bait for. Though they could damage the hull of 13-foot-long Idabel, the 18 to 20-foot-long shark's beauty, Stanley assures me, is worth the risk. They spend much of their time at 5,000 feet, but sometimes, he says, they come up. We have long had names for these sharks. The Danish named them after combs, and the Greeks after the sharpness of their teeth. The Dutch named them for sundials, and the Spanish after cows. The French call them sweetmouth, and the Portuguese a left-handed gray. The Maori refer to them via the definitive exclamation, "That's it." The Japanese, perhaps due to its size or representation of the species, call it shark. Sometimes Stanley wants to see these sharks so badly that he'll haggle with local farmers to get livestock to use as lures. To, for example, quote, strap an 80-pound pig to the side of the sub to attract them. He has video of this, captured with a GoPro and a custom dry bag on the end of a carbon fiber pole. The images are lit in the red light one may expect in the back rooms of a nightclub dungeon. The dead little pig nodding forward and back as the shark bites into it, its gills waving open, deep as wounds. Stanley also shoots horses for bait. One shark ripped the leg off a horse and swallowed it whole, he says. But before it swallowed, it swam away with the leg dangling from its jaws like a cigarette, the hoof knocking against its gills. I picture Idabel as some undersea asteroid, whirling like one of those fairground swing rides, a bunch of carcasses attached to it, spinning out over the ocean floor, a horse whipping by, a pig. Roatan is part of the Mesoamerican Reef, the second largest in the world after Australia's Great Barrier Reef. At depth, Stanley says, we'll glimpse the bottom of this ancient reef upon which the entire island rests. Bob amid constellations of iridescent shrimp, blennies, gobies, and crabs, flamingo tongues, lettuce sea slugs, cowries, and eagle rays, half shark, half rays called chimeras, which have no cartilage. 120-foot-long jellyfish, Dumbo octopi that appear to swim with their ears, blue sea cucumbers elegant as ballroom dancers, gastropods that emit pink, yellow, and blue light, fish striped like tigers, and algae that whirl like the galaxies we've named after our gods. We might see columns of mirror-like reflective fish that hang in the water heads down, glass sponges that have survived 400 million years, fish that look like 3-foot pot of dolphins, or whale shark, or hammerhead. Glowing things might appear as if tossed confetti, fireworks of life rising and falling in the water, nudibranches colliding with the seahorses. An octopus might cartwheel before getting its bearings to resume its hunt. Before uncoupling, the barracudas, jacks, and spadefish may find themselves swimming together. A squid could hold fast to the staghorn coral, its body fluttering like a moth's wings. The ostracods, the so-called bioluminescent string of pearls, having briefly dimmed, may reignite their fairy lights, thousands of strands hanging vertically in the water, resume their mating dance. Larval species will touch the bottom of the reef as if a regenerative safe base before retreating to the abyss. A frogfish might collide with a nurse shark, a moray eel with a pipe horse. Orange brain coral, coral resembling a field of purple roses, yellow branches of an endless quaking aspen, the pink bellies of upturned crab spiders, the wind-stirred savanna of swan feathers. We may see these things, Stanley says, everything overdone and Orphic, saturated and superlative. The worthwhile stuff. It's down here, he assures me. At 1,000 feet, the pink fades. The world goes dusky blue, a perpetual magic hour. Farther down, the ocean swallows natural light and goes pitch black. In order for us to see these things, they must cross the beam of Idabel's floodlight, where they appear as silvery snakes, saphonophorous balls of golden yarn, an army of petal-like wings pulsing and spinning. We float with things that, after all of his diving, Stanley still can't name. I love not knowing what you're looking at, he says. These things are so odd and unassimilable that I forget what they look like, even as I'm looking at them. There are these prehistoric filter-feeding relatives of starfish down here, Stanley says, who are capable of walking around on the seabed. Most of the people who are aware of what they even are study fossils. They've been in the fossil record 500 million years. To put it in perspective, dinosaurs were 50 or 60 million years ago. They have survived pretty much anything the planet and the universe can throw at them, and they're right here. And right here, among them, at 1,500 feet, I'm shivering in my long sleeves. The condensation on the inner hull is frigid. It pools at my feet, dampens the toes of my socks. We meander amid a canyon of fallen coral boulders where squat golden lobsters cling like spiders to sea fan webs. 200-year-old orange ruffy sniff the coral forests for the ghosts of their cousins who were whisked away to the diners of my childhood, gummed now by the ghosts of my long-dead grandparents who are still likely showing up for the early bird specials of the great beyond. Polychaete worms writhe like chanterelle mushrooms belly dancing. Little yellow slime balls, Carl calls them. We see colonies of glowing purple chandeliers and red umbrellas. As we approach, they break apart before reforming. Umbrellas become a red rain before becoming umbrellas again. A blue conger eel snakes from its lair in the coral, whips like a windsock. It gums Idabel's hole, tests our parameters, decides we're not edible, and waving its tail, disappears into its hole. We see things we see straight through, and the ocean emerges strangely when glimpsed through the portals of their bodies, as if through some funhouse mirror. I'm being pulled into these bodies, my brain wormholing, and I have to grind my teeth, rub my temples to stay with myself, to keep from floating away into some fresh version of narcosis that will compel me to dedicate my body to the depth. I bite my tongue to the blood to prove my corporeality, remind myself that another kind of gravity exists and waits for us far above where all that cruel inspecting light is. At 2,000 feet, the bioluminescent crumbs bunch together, and for a moment, I can't see the ocean beyond them. Stanley says, "Here we go." Idabel makes a shushing sound like white noise. It's taking something in or letting something go. I curl my toes in my wet socks. "What's happening?" I say. I breathe against the cold condensation on the steel, expecting to see my breath, but I don't. I wonder if I'm really here. I squeeze my forearm, and it feels real enough, or like a memory of what I'm sure I used to feel like up on the surface. "Shark," Stanley says. "Where?" "There." I can't see through the curtain of bioluminescence, but soon it opens. I see the eye first, glowing like a cat's, then its face, its thick, sleek body gyrating. The water around it goes gauzy. The bioluminescence stills. The six-gill shark is silvery green, with a flattened head and rounded snout, and when it twists, the flesh in its gills fans open, then folds over on itself in cumulus bunches. It bears the confidence of one who hasn't had to change a bit since the Triassic. A beast that realized something about survival and perfection before the rest of us. I reach for it, push my hand into the viewport's cave. I blink, and I regret blinking, because now it is only its tail, sweeping in a figure eight, and now it is gone. An orange octopus emerges from its hiding place. The ostracods twine like DNA. I want to say something to Stanley, test my voice, but I can't generate sound. I'm not sure why I'm about to cry. Stanley sighs, and it must be a loud sigh if I can hear it over Idabel's drone. At the viewport, green sperm-like creatures writhe on their journeys toward no earthly egg. Dramatically, but clearly rehearsed, Stanley counts down the last 1,000 feet of our fast ascent. 400 feet, he says, and kills the motors, kills the lights, lets the air, fizzing into the ballast tanks, rocket us to the surface. 300. And in the darkest dark I've ever been immersed in, the bioluminescence agitates about the porthole, bounces from the plexiglass like sparks from an oxyacetylene torch. Some frenzied constellation thrashing, undoing itself, forsaking shape for chaos. Some mosh pit hyperspace. 200. Idabel is hot and humid again. The light from the surface begins to penetrate the water. The seagrass reappears on the coral walls and flashes as if with tea lights. The things living within it, warning or clapping, or both, or neither. My heart accelerates, and my body remembers who I am. And though we're out of certain death if something goes awry territory, anxiety creeps back in. 100. And I've got nothing to say. We burst through the surface, foam pluming over the viewport, and there, muddied through the rinse of seawater, are the orange lights of town. Human stuff. It's pushing 9 p.m. Soon I'll hear the mopeds and diesels and honking horns along the beachfront road. I feel a great, implacable sadness. But I also want to laugh. Cackle, actually. Stanley and I stay silent as we rumble toward his dock. I try to think about what happened. Sure, I experienced the obvious awe and wonder, but there was more to it. I also felt what I've only felt in a slightly different way at funerals. The unseen ethereal comprises so much more of our world than I had understood. I knew I would never be able to experience it all again, the way I knew I would never again hear the voices of those who had died. The experience was solemn and elegiac, and time cracked. Unstuck from, if not beyond, fear and anxiety, I felt aware of myself as a crumb on the continuum. And because I could not bioluminesce, I felt invisible and crushingly lonely and already forgotten. But mostly I felt nothing. Utterly blank. Not just wiped clean, but wiped away. I watched baby translucent orange squids strobe in the murk, plume their ink like mushrooms, and blissfully, as if already dead, I felt so quieted that I felt nothing. Yeah, thanks.
Does anybody have any questions for Matt? I've been monitoring the chat, and so if you're watching online, you can put it in the chat and I can put the question to Matt. But if anybody has any questions, please feel free. Or we can sit here and stare at him uncomfortably.
I love pushing an awkward silence.
Well, I'm curious how, with your fear of all of that, how did you get into that machine? You take a Valium or something?
I didn't. No. I got in just with a very troubled heart. I just let it be as troubled as it needed to be. I've mentioned this to folks before. I don't really know. I have this glitch, I think, that when I am working on a project, when I'm chasing a story, I could become easily obsessed with obsessives, and I have trouble retracting my claws from it, I guess, like a cat. And so when I'm chasing a story, I feel as if I can tuck these kinds of phobias into the confines of the story and the project itself. And the story and the project, strangely, and I'm saying I think this is a glitch, cushions the phobia, dampens it, softens it, where I just don't feel it as much as I would. Like if I wasn't doing this for a story, there's no way I would have gotten into that submersible. And strangely, like a couple months after I did this dive with Carl Stanley, that's when the Titan submersible imploded and made big news. That was like a couple months after this. Had that happened before I did this, there's no way I ever would have like shimming my hips through that culvert narrow hatch. But that's the best way I could explain it. I don't think that's a good quality that I have necessarily. I kind of sometimes feel like I put myself in what might be dangerous situations, and I refuse to acknowledge the danger of them as I'm doing it because I'm chasing a story. And in fact, I feel like I'm incapable of acknowledging it.
We're glad you did it.
Thanks.
Question sort of corollary to that one. What was the effect of all the people that you are close to when you came up with this idea of taking this dip in this submersible? I mean, it must have been something for not just them to deal with, but for you to deal with their reaction.
Yeah. So, I mean, folks who were close to me were not very happy that I decided to do this. And in fact, I broke a few promises in doing it for the story. I still feel a little bit bad about it. I mean, essentially, like on the ground, like the minute we got back to the dock is when I started texting a lot of different people, and then they apparently started texting other people to let them know I had survived the dive in this thing that was like built in that airport hangar in Oklahoma. I'll never do it again. I promise. I won't put you through it. Again, I guess, but I probably like put my loved ones through something they didn't deserve to go through. I promise my mom I'll never do it again, and I'm going to make good on it.
I was going to ask if you would do it again. But, so you've given us a great gift by describing all of this, because none of us here, I'm sure, will ever do this. Did you see a creature that you forgot as soon as you saw it? As you said, you
So I feel like I couldn't assimilate really much of the bioluminescent life that I saw. It was just so deeply. I mean, it feels reductive to even call it strange and beautiful. Like I like the poet Alberto Rios writes in this poem some extensions on the sovereignty of science, and this is a poet saying this. Words are our weakest hold on the world, right? And so I feel like, I can't remember any of it, but as far as like, the precise like anatomical schematics of the bioluminescent creatures, but I remember it in impressions. And so I won't do it again, no, but I could see how this can become an addiction for certain folks. I think about the dive in one form or another, probably a little bit every day since I've done it. Some of the folks in the DIY submersible community that I spoke to, speaking of words, they talked about enduring time on the surface until they do their next dive. So some of them have spent like well over 2 years of their lives in aggregate in the deep sea, like underwater, and one is busy scouting out locations off of around Indonesia and things, and she wants to build an underwater house there where she could like hang for extended periods of time. You'd have to scuba into it, and when she's not there, the writers and artists in the room, she plans on letting it out as an artist residency. Yeah, Jeff.
What's the lag time for you between like experiencing something like this and writing about it? Like, are you jotting while you're in the submersible? Do you need time to process? Like, there's just such rich detail there, and you're underwater for, I'm assuming, a very long time to get that.
It was about 3 hours was the dive, yeah, and so I took notes up to a point, and then I stopped and just looked, I suppose, and sat there. That night, when I got back to this little room where I was staying, I just wrote for hours and hours and hours and hours. So a lot of the details that stuck, of course, like I just took notes that night, like multiple pages worth of notes that same night, and then I actually like hung out in Honduras a little while after the dive, and I worked on it in that little room in Roatan for a little while and began shaping it into what eventually became this part of the book. But it went through multiple drafts. I mean, some of the drafts happened like a year after the dive. There was like redrafting happening and things, but there was a lot of stuff taken right there on site too.
I think we had a question right here.
I was actually going to ask a very similar question, but I guess what surprised you most about your journey?
There were so many surprising things. One of the things that surprised me in my research journey was I mentioned like from the top that I kept bumping up against the story of this murder that took place on this amateur submersible off of the coast of Copenhagen, Denmark. And I guess it was surprising to me that I wrote about that. Like I wasn't intending to write about that murder at all when I sat down to write the book. I was intending for it to be like this micro-examination of this niche community of DIY submersible enthusiasts, scratching at them to find some kind of like microcosmic comment on, human obsession and human longing and human desire and the wondrous and kind of not so wondrous sides of the human exploratory impulse. But like as I was researching, I kept bumping up against the story of this murder, which was very, again, it surprised me. And a lot of the folks who I was interviewing for the book were very, very eager and excited to talk about this murder that took place. And so I felt as if I had to reckon with it on the page to see how the story of this murder, in a way, because it was so inflaming the community at this particular particular time could kind of converse with some of the other stuff that I wanted to engage too. So during the writing process, that was awfully surprising to me. I'll tell you a surprising thing about Carl, who I went down with. At the beginning of the chapter, when I first get there, he confesses that his dog had just died that morning, a pit bull named Cujo, that he with a K, like Carl. And apparently Cujo had crawled off under the neighbor's house and had died. And that very morning I went down with Carl, and I'm sorry that this is gruesome, like this hurts me too, but like he dragged Cujo's body out and cut Cujo's head off with a hacksaw, and then threw it to the fireworms in the brush, because the Honduran fireworms, he felt would eat it to the bone within a few days. And he said he did this out of sentimentality because he wanted to mount Cujo's skull on the front facade of his house next to a horse pelvis that was already there. And so, so this, I mean, that was a surprising, like, portal through which to pass, as I stepped onto the submersible that had absolutely no communication systems too. So that surprised me. Yeah.
Just a couple things from online. Patricia Callaway sends her love to you.
Oh. Can you write her back, Marty, and say love you too?
Okay. Then I also have a question from Kathleen Heigeman. You probably know her. She says, I resonate with your glitch, getting caught up with what we stock. And she says, what is the next elusive subject of your inquiry?
I don't know how to talk about it yet. So I'm working on a new book, and I'm very much in the making a mess stage. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to figure out its parameters. But I will tell you one small thing. It's about, in part, the role of music in cults and cult-like structures. I'm still figuring the rest of it out. And it's probably going to be like the most memoirish thing I've written in a long time. Yeah.
Nothing frightening? You're not going to do anything frightening for that?
This is the book that might get me into the most amount of trouble.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned in response to a question earlier that part of this project started out as an investigation into obsessions and that kind of part of humanity. My question is, where did this project start? Did you read something? Did you meet someone that got you into this world? Like, where did the project start for investigating this niche kind of,
No, it's a good, Jordan, I years ago, like I was living in Juneau, Alaska, and I was running a little breakfast restaurant adjacent to a bowling alley. We made really, really good blueberry pancakes. They're good blueberries in Alaska. I had saved like enough tip money to go on like a little road trip through the state, and so I took my leave of the Channel Bowl Cafe and road tripped what portion of Alaska you can road trip, like where there are roads. And so I ended up encountering on that road trip. This is years and years and years ago. This is like a late 90s. I encountered a guy who was living off the grid in the middle of the woods, and he was he was like this outsider artist building these really strange sculptures and machines just amid like the Sitka spruce trees. And so he built his own catamaran. He built like a 20-story high fiberglass fire that he painted green and white, and then he affixed little platforms at every story and had an external spiral staircase on the thing. So you could walk up 20 stories and hang out on these platforms. So you would be like at the tops of the Sitka spruce trees, hanging out with the eagles, like where they were nesting. Like this guy just wanted to be with the eagles. They didn't really want to be with him. And he was also building a submersible, like in the middle of the woods there. And I actually like went into it with him. He turned out to be a horrible, horrible person. I will tell you that. He's written about a little bit in the book. But I guess I started asking myself like the question all the way back then in 1998. Are there others like him out there who, like, you know, are building their own submersibles with no formal engineering training? Or is this guy an anomaly? And I guess it was always just kind of in the back of my head. Like, I worked through other book projects, but, you know, I kept thinking about this. And eventually, just pre-COVID, I started like engaging it on the page a little bit and started doing this research until I found this kind of like thriving, if small, like thriving in a very like enthusiastic and kind of like self-supportive kind of way, community of DIY submersible enthusiasts who are out there. And a sub-faction of them, they hold yearly conventions. And they get together from all over, you know, mostly North America. Sometimes folks fly in from Europe for these kinds of things. And, hijinks ensue. These are really, really interesting, like, weird conventions. Like, that's my advice to you. Like, if you want to get a story, go to a strange niche convention and just hang out with a bunch of obsessives, whether you are initially obsessed with the object of their obsession or not. I mean, part of our, you know, job as writers is to manufacture obsession by, you know, hanging with obsessives, and, you know, eventually there's some sort of static electricity that just kind of pops until like the obsession becomes like genuine for the observer too. At least I think so.
Well, let's give Matt a hand.
Thanks, you all.
Dana is back there with Snowbound. Please stop and buy a book. They made great Christmas presents, birthday presents, and Halloween presents because there's a murder in it. So there you go. All right. All right. Thank you all for coming.